Now, the conversations on new national minimum wage have reached a fever pitch as Nigeria stands on the verge of a nationwide strike over the testy matter. Now, following the ultimatum issued by Organised Labour, the federal government has summoned a meeting of 37-member Tripartite Committee on the new national minimum wage in order to beat the deadline. And among the agenda of the meeting are presentations by the federal government, states and organised private sector of their minimum wage proposals. And don't forget about that the Organised Labour made a proposal of 615,000 naira minimum wage. Adewale, I understand this is not, we've been discussing the national minimum wage and this gradually getting to a head. But what are your expectations from the outcome of this meeting? Are you hoping to see anything different? Let's start with that.
Well, I hope to see a situation where there is a minimum agreement, between labor, a realistic agreement,
How realistic are you, Prof?
In the sense that we cannot be talking about minimum wage in a vacuum. It has to be based on facts and figures. And I believe both are empowered to the federal government and also the Trade Union Congress and the General Labour Congress. Both are empowered, they are in a position to obtain statistics so that when you are debating, you are talking from informed position. So the two have agreed, TUC and LNC, that, okay, we want 315,000 naira as minimum wage. For me, I think that looks so huge. And if we are not careful, it might destabilize the economic equilibrium. But if they can convince us that, look, this is how much Nigeria realizes from crude oil, the GDP, from tax, this is how much the federal government takes, states, this is how much goes to states. Because the Nigerian Labour Congress has its members in almost every aspect of the country. They are in the Accountant General's office. They are members of NOGE. They are in the Civil Service Union. So they should have access to these figures. So if the NLC wants to speak, I want to see how you can convince Nigerians. We have been, flaunting a lot of figures and all that, but we want to see conscientious, a position based, driven by reality. But if that is absent, we are talking about 650 will just be like masturbating the ego of Nigerian workers. Unless you are able to prove that this Nigerian government is in a position to pay this amount. But I think that the NSC coming with this kind of figure might be a way to negotiate from position of strength. So that, okay, if you come with this figure, then, it means that we have to negotiate and then come down. But that must have been informed by lack of trust on both sides. The government and labor do not trust each other. They are contemptuous of each other. Because if there is trust, there's no need for you to come with figures that are not realistic. And we should also not forget that the Nigerian Labour Congress has probably about 4 to 5 million members, which is just about 2.5% of Nigerian population. So if you are paying this figure, you also have to look at the impact in the informal sector. It's not just that when you say Nigerian labor, it's going to affect those that are not the unorganized labor. And they are about 85% of Nigerians are working in the informal sector. So, but if you now have a minimum wage where a cleaner in the civil service will earn 615,000, it means that the private sector, hotels, private sector, even civil society organizations, they must be compelled to pay. So if you are not careful, there's a lot of things that, unforeseen consequences. Loss of jobs. State governments, federal government may be compelled to reduce the workforce in order to meet the new minimum wage. Private sector will also take the same decision. So at the end of the day, it's going to be to counter-program because more people will lose their jobs because the private sector and the government sector wants to try as much as possible to meet up with the new minimum wage. So I think we need to be sensible, we need to be realistic, we need to go with that meeting with a clear mind and then also come up with figures to convince Nigerians. Though it's a debate between the federal government and labor, but it's also a debate between Nigerians and the government. So it must be an open, transparent debate that all of us will be convinced that when we want to take side, we'll be taking sides based on accurate information.
So, Brother BC, what are your thoughts on this? You share the same sentiments, or you're having a different opinion?
I think the Labour is joking. I don't even. I think the 615,000 naira is unrealistic, and what it just gives me the impression that they are not serious-minded, because you cannot be negotiating from 30,000 minimum wage to 615,000 minimum wage. It's as if they are joking or they are jokers, and I'm sure they are very serious. Of course, they told us how they arrived at the 615,000 naira, and in as much as I do agree with them, I understand the calculations and the rest, but we all know that you cannot you can't come to me to renegotiate your salary and be asking for more than 1,000% increase. So for me, that is not realistic, and it shows it's as if they are jokers. 30,000, 615,000 naira is not realistic. However, I believe that this issue of negotiating minimum wage is long overdue. Remember that the 30,000 naira minimum wage was supposed to be reviewed, I think, after 5 years, which was not done. And at the beginning of this administration, when fuel subsidy was removed and all of that, there was also a promise that the Nigerian workers would be paid living wage. So I guess the living wage is the reason why the Labour is coming up with 615,000 naira. I ask myself, why should government rush to set up committees when Labour gives strike notices? Why should we always wait for strike notices before we do this? Because it is almost 1 year now, and this 30,000 naira has remained minimum wage. I don't even want to imagine what anybody can do with 30,000 naira now. It's with the level of increase, hike, and all of that, the inflation and the rest. So 30,000 naira is apparently not it for anybody. I'm even sorry to say, and I'm not even a rich person, I don't even pay my cleaner that 30,000 naira now. And she doesn't come to my house every day. She only comes 4 times in a month. So, and I pay from my own pension. You understand? I take that money from my own pension, which is also not up to 200,000 naira, so that people don't look at me and think I'm a very rich person. But I need to do that because I just look at the fact that this person is going to spend money on transport to come to my place, and transport fare has since tripled. So I'm not even doing anything like a favor. It's just like understanding one another. I think government and the Labour should also work with us understanding. And as for the Labour saying that 615,000, imagine if you have more than 5 people in your employment, you are compelled by law to pay 615,000 naira. So ask yourself, how much is somebody that runs a firm that has 5 workers, how much would they be generating that they will now be paying 615,000 naira? That is why I said it looks like a joke. And also the organized private sector will have to go by the minimum wage. Let's assume that after negotiation and renegotiation, they even come to 200,000 naira. How many people can pay that? Remember, I read it today, that some states in the north still pay 4,000 and 6,000 naira minimum wage. Also remember that there are so many state governments that don't even pay this 30,000 naira minimum wage. So I just feel that the element of love is very absent in the way we deal with ourselves.
Should that be the yardstick here?
Yes, it should be, because if it is there, you can I just gave you an example of myself with the person that comes to claim my place. I'm not doing what I'm doing because I'm rich or buoyant. So if a state government, for example, looks at what it takes for the workers to come to work and do this and do that, then, and based on that, decide the minimum comfort based on the revenue that the state government is generating, and if they look at areas where they can curb wastage so that they can be able to save some money to meet the needs of the workers, not necessarily in terms of salary, maybe in form of allowances. Because if you say salary, like we just explained, a minimum wage is binding on so many other businesses, right, which may not be possible. Right. So now, if we say, okay, maybe allowances, maybe health allowance, accommodation allowance, living allowances, different kind of things can be built in. But it has to be from a point of understanding that this is the minimum that any human being needs to live as a human being. Then we now ask, do we have this money? Then the second leg of the question is this: what are the civil servants contributing to the main economy, right, both at the federal government and at the state level? Even how are they planning to justify whatever they want to earn, and what revenue are they generating? Do you understand? Because if you want productivity, you look at civil service is not just a place where you dash people money. You must, we understand this very well in the private sector. And that is why in the private sector, if you are not productive, before you know it,
you're let go.
You are let go. But you know, in the civil service, it's as once you get there, you are there for life until you retire. Nothing changes. But we need to begin to look at that process in our governance. Should civil servants just be people that are in government to partake of the national cake? I know a lot of them are productive, but what are they doing? And the labor itself, right, I think they need to talk about this aspect of what these workers are going to be doing to increase productivity, so that they can increase revenue generation that can even make it possible for government to pay them extra amounts. We also need to look at that.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with you on that aspect as well. But you know, when you're talking about balancing this need for minimum wage, let's look at how the government can, you know, ensure this is done while taking cognizance of the current realities, financial realities in various states and, of course, the private sector. How do you think the government can balance this?
Well, I think the 37-member Tripartite Committee has people from different sectors: the Ministry of Finance, the private sector, Nigerian Labour Congress. So I hope people will go to that meeting with adequate information to negotiate and, you know, talk to each other. But the Nigerian Labour Congress should also not forget, just like my sister said there, you see, improving the life of Nigerians, the workforce, is not just about having higher wages. There are a lot of areas that are neglected that Nigerian Labour Congress needs to also realize. It's not just paying higher wages that will automatically resolve, you know, the challenges that are facing Nigerians. For instance, look at our health services system. Those that are working there are members of their unions. Look at go to public sector, the health sector. Just like sometimes you wait, you see a nurse talking for about 15 minutes before he attends to a patient. Go to the civil service. We are talking about demolition and all those kind of things because of corruption. You want to get approval for a building, they direct you to an agent. You may pay to about 5-6 agents before you are able to get the correct one. There are workers there sabotaging the country. We are talking about embezzlement in banks and all sorts of things. There are people who are members of Nubife who are in these workplaces who are sabotaging and destroying the country. So part of the responsibility of labor is not just about minimum wages. It's also about training to acquire new skills. It's also about education. It's also about working to improve public services. Look at what has happened in other countries like Cuba. A lot of people don't know that malaria has been eliminated in Cuba in 1973. There was malaria in UK until 1917. What is labor doing? The midwife association and all that, what are they doing in terms of coming out with practical programs to uplift the country from the state that we are today? So it's not just about, every time we want wages and all that. The Nigerian Labour Congress needs to reenact itself to be able to tailor itself towards development and growth of the economy. So I think labor also needs to look forward. For instance, we are talking about price control. What is labor doing about the issue of price control? When electricity companies increase tariffs, labor went there and started demonstrating. But this notice was there 3 weeks. Labor didn't do anything until after the increase had been imposed on Nigerians. Price control, for instance, in other countries, we have Price Control Act of 1977, which was introduced after the Doji of 1976, that the fuel prices went up, and then they set up this price control. In 2004, President Obasanjo reenacted that law. It is there. We have price control board. What is labor doing in terms of trying to engage them? They are not doing your job. Look, what of health services? We have something like health insurance for workers. Insurance for workers, accident and all that. What are we doing to improve the conditions of workers apart from just talking about wages? The U.S. has the Emergency Act, Price Control of 1942 in the midst of the Second World War. And that act is there. The Federation of Unions in the U.S. made sure that this price control works. So when prices are increase all over, labor comes in to engage the government and say, look, what is the price control board doing? So it's not just about every time we want wages to go up and all that. The Nigerian Labour Congress needs to go to its traditional duties of realizing that it is part of development of this country and must also look back at itself to change the kind of orientation of the workforce to be able to make them more meaningful, more useful to the strive for development, sustainable development in Nigeria.
So what will it take to get labor to key into this, will I say objective or this tactic, if I would put it, to see the benefits or to see the value by which they can contribute to societal growth and development? They
just need to go back to history. Nigerian Labour Congress, under the people like Sumano and people like Imodu, they had a series of departments. That's why you see in those days, when labor comes out with a position, NAS will back that position. ASU will back that position. Nigerian Union of Journalists will back that position because it is a popular decision. It's a popular program. But increasingly, labor is being isolated, from the Nigerian masses, So I think labor, in order to be able to dignify itself, and the claim is, is heritage, must go back to the traditional core values of labor, of the labor movement in Nigeria. So that when it comes to the program, people, we had a program here last week, and people are calling, say that the program of NSC, the minimum wage is not realistic. A lot of callers were against, this kind of, and labor needs to realize that it needs public will. It needs public goodwill to be able to, get what it wants from the government. This demand, for instance, 615, I don't know how they came about this kind of figure. It will further diminish the reputation of labor if things are done in a way that does not look realistic and meaningful in terms of negotiating with the government.
And in terms of negotiating with the government, they also insist that if nothing is done, they can't guarantee the peace and stability of the country. Definitely they will go on indefinite strike. But Olabisi, what strategies do you think the government can do to avoid such an incident that is likely to happen? Because
don't bother about government. Government is very adept are tackling that. How many strikes have Labour gone? They just threaten and nothing happens at the end of the day. As a matter of fact,
so you're not hopeful about
if NLC has been the NLC that it described, no, this government won't even be this comfortable. That is the truth. That is the truth. This government can be this comfortable. But over time, both the masses and the government have realized that these ones are just backing dogs. They only back. They lack action. And government has started doing what it would do. And that is this committee meeting, inviting them to negotiate and the rest. They are telling us now that no, after 31st, they are going to go on strike, this and this. But I don't think any Nigerian believes them. I don't think...
You think they're more of toothless bulldogs?
They are toothless bulldogs. They are not going to go. They will go on strike for 3 days. And they will come back to the negotiation table. That is what they've been doing for the last 1 year. They've been threatening strike. In fact, I don't even want to think about them. At the time, they even made me to even lose money because I thought they were serious about their strike. I had to embark on a journey that I shouldn't have because I thought they would be on strike. I needed to do some things before they start their strike. See me, I spent money on hotel. I did all of that. At the end of the day, there was no strike. So I don't think there is going to be any major indefinite strike because Nigerians aren't even interested in any indefinite strike or not indefinite strike. They just want better living conditions. And I don't also think that they have confidence in this current NLC and TUC as currently constituted to be their saviors in this country for now. So maybe NLC may now want to say we want to redeem our image. We want to prove to the people that we are really on their side. They may want to prove me wrong. But honestly speaking, I know this government is intelligent enough to tackle this. However, I want to advise government not to be political about this negotiation. I think they should just face this issue once and for all. It's long overdue. This review of the minimum wage is long overdue. They should just tackle this once and for all and agree at an amount that is reasonable, that will be reasonable at all levels, the state government level. Remember that it's not even about the federal government alone. And the federal government cannot even impose its own minimum wage on states because it's not the one that is going to be paying that and all of that. So everybody should be reasonable. Neither can even the labor impose anything on the organized private sector because they are not going to be the one to give them the money to pay. So I think they should look at everything holistically and come up with an agreement that is workable across board so that everybody will be able to do it. And also they should not be insisting on this 615,000 naira because apparently it is not realistic. And if you insist on 615,000 and if they go on strike on that basis, I doubt if they will get the sympathy of the public because it's like you are just saying things that are not realistic. They should also know that and know what to do.
Adewale, what's your final thoughts on this issue?
Yes, I absolutely agree with him that Labour should be conscious to retain its integrity. And the only way you can do that is to negotiate in a way that people will have respect, for your position and not to make yourself look frivolous. If you should come with a position that is backed with concrete facts so that you don't make yourself a laughingstock. And if you want to go on strike, you must make sure that that strike commands the popular will of Nigerians. If you continuously come with strike that do not command, the will of Nigerians, gradually you begin to lose your reputation.
And how do you think they can do that?
Yeah, they need to they need to be realistic with the government needs to increase the minimum wage, but labor needs to be realistic to know that, look, this is what the government can pay, and then we can agree from 30,000 to an amount that we all agree that even if the government fails to pay, everybody will blame the government, not the Nigerian Labour Congress.
Yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I just want to ask now, what would you propose as an agreed amount? Because taking note of the realities, economic realities on ground, what would you propose, as a sane or realistic minimum wage?
Well, I think if we look at the percentage increase we have had over the years, we've had 50% increase, 100% increase. If we are talking about 150% increase, it's still way far off from 615. So if we should look at percentage, if we are talking about 150% increase, I think that may be realistic. Instead of a percentage that will create more problems for us, people will increase their food stuff and we'll be regretting that, we should have not asked for this particular amount. And something that the government can pay so that people are not sacked, they don't lose their jobs. Some people will still tell you that, if I get my 30,000, it's better than nothing, than to lose my jobs. Yeah. So people don't want to lose their jobs. So I think we need to be factual.
Right, and that's not. I'd like to thank my guests in the studio. Thank you so much, Adewale Adeoye and Olabisi Adeji Fulutile, for your thoughts on the program, Journalist Dangat. Well, that's about what we can take for today's episode of the show.